Welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. And Callum, we're being kept in order today. We've got a proper broadcaster on the show. Joining us today is local DJ Beth Wallace. Beth, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I actually just thought I maybe should have put my specs on and then I could have been like part of the group.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can keep everything in order here and impress you with some of our broadcasting skills. Callum, I know you sometimes are impressed by my links, but more impressive, of course, we finally claimed our first 3 points of 2023 with a 2-0 win over St Johnstone at the weekend. Happy man, Callum?
Definitely. It's about time, isn't it?
Definitely. About time. There's lots of positivity on the show. And Beth, of course, at the weekend, we saw the return to the starting lineup of Graeme Shinnie. What was your thoughts on the return of Graeme Shinnie to Aberdeen?
Wasn't really paying attention throughout the day, and then all of a sudden, like, it happened. I was like, well, that just came out of absolutely nowhere. But I feel like it probably came at the right time. We were kind of needing that bit of a morale boost, especially with recent results, and I think there's been a lot of negativity amongst the fans, so it felt like the right thing to get people going. And obviously, he obviously wasn't the sole cause of the win on Saturday, but he definitely had his impact. So I think it was right man at the right time.
Yeah, and Callum, that's definitely what you thought would happen if we re-signed Graeme Shinnie. So you're very happy to be proven right in this case, aren't you?
Absolutely, and even more happy that you were proven wrong, so that makes you feel even better. But I totally agree with Beth there. I think it just sort of gave everyone a lift. As soon as that happened, I sort of forgot about what had happened in the previous games, and I was just very excited to see him playing. I was playing alongside Ramadani as well. It's just passion merchants in the middle of the field, and I absolutely love it. But I'm just delighted that he came in, performed well, and after you were humming and haying about whether you'd have him back or what sort of impact you'd have, had a positive one.
Yeah, he absolutely did. And you're right, the passion merchant, you saw that throughout the game on Saturday. And you forgot about so much. You forgot to even tweet about Duke Day. And look what happened as well. I suppose we'll come on to that as well. But I think, Beth, you're right. It was the kind of right place, right time to galvanate the support. And, like London Buses too became along at the same time with Patrik Myslovic, I'll probably slaughter his pronunciation of his last name there, joining on loan from MSK Zelina, the 21-year-old who's already made over 100 appearances at such a young age. Sounds like we're getting an experienced head on young shoulders. Obviously, we're not going to claim like we know a lot about him, but another exciting talent coming from abroad.
Yeah, like I had a wee look at on YouTube, as we all do when we get a new signing, and I watched the 2-minute video and I'm like, oh, this guy looks fantastic. But it is YouTube and we can make anyone look good in a 2-minute video. I'm sure I'd look a fantastic footballer if someone put together my best bits in a 2-minute video. They'd have to probably really scrape stuff together, but he looks like he likes a pop out the box, some screamers probably, so hopefully the video actually lives up to how he will play. I think he will be good. I don't think they would be buying another midfielder unless it was good, because we're quite well there in the middle at the minute. Mm-hmm. But I think he'll be tip top.
Yeah, and Callum, the Zelina manager, caused a bit of hysteria with his comments around saying that we were going to lose a player on loan in that position, prompting hysteria that Leighton Clarkson was a way to be recalled from Liverpool, but potentially meaning could have maybe lost in translation. It could be that a player currently on loan from Aberdeen, aka Conor McLennan or Dean Campbell, who of course is very much in the headlines after his goal-scoring exploits at the weekend, could maybe not have a future at Aberdeen. Is that maybe where the Zelina manager was going with his comments?
Potentially. I mean, I think you mentioned Dean Campbell there. It's a very interesting one because I think his contract is currently up at the end of the season, and it'll be weird to see. It'll be interesting to see if perhaps, I know we won't give a contract based off just one performance, but if he does continue to impress, whether he'll get another contract here or whether he maybe fancies his chances. He might take it out of our hands and he might fancy his chances down in England, see how far sort of up that pyramid he could get. So it'll be an interesting one. But the manager certainly caused chaos on that one. I was devastated at the prospect of Clarkson potentially leaving. But whilst we were on Patrik, Myslovic, I think it's how it's pronounced, after you and Stuart messaged me on Twitter saying he works with a Slovakian person and he asked, basically. So that'll maybe help us along the way.
Yeah, well, hopefully we get the international clearance for him soon. Maybe this weekend comes too soon for him, and we see him maybe midweek at Tynecastle. But on to the game from the weekend itself. Beth, I thought there was probably one of our better first halves. We've said on the show quite a lot, we tend to be quite lethargic, slow to get into games, but I actually thought we very much started on the front foot.
Yeah, I agreed. I think, when that disallowed goal went in, like, my thoughts, right, that's us going to go ahead and pound in a few goals, but obviously it was disallowed, and right enough, it was marginally offside, but marginally offside is still offside, unfortunately. But yeah, it definitely felt a little bit better than it had in other games. I wasn't sat there quite as depressed as I have been in previous weeks, but there's still a few things that obviously need to be fixed, but it was definitely a big improvement on previous weeks.
Yeah, and for you, what would you say were the things you were looking to be fixed from that first half?
I think everyone's probably saying the same thing, that the defence is the shaky part of our game. Jim Goodwin, when he arrived, said it would take no time at all to fix the defence, but in reflection, that was probably a bit naive and potentially a bit arrogant as well. I don't know, we need to sign some defenders. Coulson and Richardson, they're good going forward, but they're not defenders. They're not natural defenders. Anthony Stewart has had his mistakes in recent weeks. I think sometimes he almost panics when he's got too much time on the ball. If he's not got as much time on the ball, I actually almost think that's better for him. So the defence is definitely where we need to shake it up a little bit. Although we were the better team in that, still you felt that anxiousness and nervousness when the ball was coming towards our defence. So that's the thing that really needs shaking up. Yeah,
it's funny that comment you made about Anthony Stewart, because the Ian I was sitting next to, and he goes, Anthony Stewart had 5 players in red that he could pass to, and he still managed to pass the ball directly to Andy Constantine at one point. But the crazy thing is, we're sitting here that the defence maybe still needs a bit of work, but they've had back-to-back clean sheets, and it's still maybe not perfect, but signs maybe that it's going in the right direction. But Calum, obviously we had Duk's goal disallowed, but Bojan Miovski, I mean, when your luck's not going for you, your luck's really not going for you. And to be honest, I actually felt really sorry for Bojan on Saturday, because, as I said, on another day he could have been walking away with a hat-trick in that first 45.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly the most clear-cut chance when he was through on goal, forced a decent save. I suppose, however, a couple more chances, one where he tried to lob the keeper. I think he's unlucky, particularly with that one, and then the Sclaft shot, he absolutely needed to do better there. But it looks like he can't buy a goal at the minute, and it's a shame, especially because the way he started off his career at Aberdeen, he was flying. He was the Messiah. I know it seems to have gone to Duk right now, but I think strikers always go through these spells, and I suppose the most important part is he is getting those chances. If he wasn't finding himself in the right position, if his movement was off and things like that, that's when you'd maybe start to worry. He will find his goal scoring form eventually, and hopefully it's next weekend. That would be ideal. However, I'm not sure if that's the case. I'm not sure if he'll start. I've seen a few people on social media suggesting that Duk should start up top over him, and where does Bojan Miovski then fit in? But I suppose we'll come on to that later on.
Yeah, we'll come on to that. And I suppose for me, that one-on-one where, as you said, it was probably a good save from Remy Matthews, probably does sum up where Bojan is just now. A couple of months ago, he definitely finds the back of the net. But what I quite liked on Saturday was he was certainly making the runs that maybe he hasn't been for a while. He was getting in the space, showing for the ball. And there was an incident in the first half where I think it was Ramadani could have played him in, and he was screaming for the ball, but Ramadani went out wide to Matt Kennedy, and the whole move just kind of died a death. And and I just felt a bit sorry again for Bojan that he created that space, looked for the ball, and unfortunately didn't get the pass. But Calum, on the point that Caitlin was making, on the point that Beth was making about our defence and kind of having those nervous moments, did you ever feel like St Johnstone were causing us problems in that first half? The only real opportunity I remember was Stevie May heading just past the post.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think they ended up with just the one shot on target throughout the whole game. You almost sort of felt if there was going to be any threat on our goal, it was going to come from more our own doing rather than anything else, which I think has been quite often the case this season. St Johnstone really did offer very, very little. And, they're lumping the ball up to Stevie May, and I've been critical of Liam's skills and how he dealt with things, but I thought he did improve. Certainly didn't have a physical striker so much to deal with. And Anthony Stewart as well, I did think he was, he had one of his better games in an Aberdeen shirt. Again, I think perhaps he wasn't tested quite so much by St Johnstone, and there was still a little bit of nervousness, however, when him in particular was on the ball. But I thought he was a bit better, and I still felt that if there was going to be anything sort of more worrying in the game, it was going to come from our own wrongdoing. But it never came, and I was quite pleasantly surprised. As you say, 2 clean sheets in the bout, almost unheard of from Aberdeen, really.
Yeah, and Beth, I think, when we speak about the nervousness, certainly that Anthony Stewart was possessing at times, it goes back to, again, the maybe importance of Graeme Shinnie coming into this side, because he was acting as almost that calming figure, just telling him, just take your time, just calm down. It's all right. We've not conceded. We've got away with it maybe. But, there's leaders there that can now step up, an additional leader in Graeme Shinnie. He might not have the armband in the sense, but he can help guide certain players through the game. And like Anthony Stewart, who was maybe having wobbles at times on Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. I think Shinnie just came back in and he looked like he'd never left, sort of thing. He was commanding in the middle of the pitch. He was giving the ref a hard time like he always has. You were almost certain that yellow card was coming for him, and I'm surprised it didn't, the amount of fouls that went against him. Maybe he was just going, it's his first game back to Aberdeen, we'll book him next week, sort of thing. But he just felt like he'd always been there, so he definitely just slotted right back into that leadership role. And him and I always call him Ramadandi, by the way, because dandies. So Ramadani, they just felt that just the two of them will be a great pairing. I think they'll both really show their leadership. Sometimes you maybe recently have missed Johnny Hayes, his leadership as well. I don't know if he's fully fit enough to be starting and things like that. I thought Johnny Hayes at the start of our season was one of our better players. He was really, sort of pushing forward and leading. But he's obviously not had that much game time since he's been away injured. Hopefully that'll come back as well. So there is a leader in Johnny Hayes there. Guys who've been around, it was a nice moment in the second goal when Shinnie and Hayes came together, and I was like, it's like the good old days.
But Calum, I suppose that kind of also goes back to the maybe quality that Jim Goodwin was speaking about of taking off the bench. I will come on to a little bit, but you've got that opportunity for Johnny Hayes to not necessarily rely on him to start games. We can now use his pace, or certainly his pace that he retains at the end of games. But around Graeme Shinnie as well, I certainly thought for the first time, certainly since the World Cup, the squad and the starting 11 looked very balanced. You could almost see what Jim Goodwin's plan was with Graeme Shinnie sitting alongside Ramadani, and it really freed up Leighton Clarkson to just run around and just try and cause St Johnstone problems. Absolutely.
I mean, I don't think it was Leighton Clarkson's one of his better games. However, I certainly see he did have a lot more creative freedom, sometimes a little bit of a free roll in front of them, just to sort of find those pockets of space. And I think certainly in games where it's maybe a bit more open as well, he'll definitely benefit in those. But you use the word balance there, and that was the word I was going to use myself. Because if you think about it, in previous games, we'd had Ramadani, Barron, Clarkson all preferring their right foot, always looking to go that way. Whereas with Ramadani and Shinnie both in there, able to go both ways, and we just look a lot more comfortable, and it looks like a lot more of a structured shape with those two sort of protecting and then able to break forward as well. So there's times sort of Ramadani leading a little bit of a press as well, Shinnie as well, and I think we missed that massively too with Graeme Shinnie. So we just looked a lot more comfortable, and I think Anthony Stewart definitely benefited from that as well as Liam Scales too. Just having those two perfectly sat in front of them, knowing they'll do the dirty work that's required of them, and then they can also play a little bit too. So I'm very, very happy, and I'm a lot more confident now coming into the semi-final, which we will talk to you about in the next episode. But I'm a lot happier. Still not 100% content, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point. That kind of, again, going back to the word balance, that the almost as well pressure was being taken off Ramadani. The point you make about him having to kind of help out Anthony Stewart or Liam Scales by receiving the ball deep and then have a lot of ground to cover to take it up into the midfield. Him and Graeme Shinnie could kind of switch that about, and as well, if Ramadani did want to drive forward, he knew that there was a very capable midfielder sitting there in Graeme Shinnie and vice versa. But obviously at halftime, as Beth said, Duk has his goal disallowed correctly, because unfortunately with VAR and offsides it is hard to argue around that. Beth, were you sensing it was going to be another one of those days at 0-0 at halftime with all the chances missed and of course the VAR decision?
At halftime, maybe not. Maybe 10 minutes into the second half, there was just a wee moment where it just felt like we were kind of regressing to what we had in previous games, particularly down that left side. We seemed to get a little bit messy. There's too much space and that. And I was like, oh, here we go, sort of thing. And then when the goal did come, it came quite unexpectedly. I think most people were like, well, that was a little bit messy, but we'll take it, sort of thing. But actually watching it back in the highlights, I was like, oh, that actually was a lot smoother than it looked in real time. I think I was about a few seconds delayed in actually celebrating the goal, because I was like, oh, we've actually just scored from that. So once that goal had went in, I was like, no, that's just like sort of cemented. I think we've got the win here, but it wasn't really until that goal had quite went in that I was confident.
Yeah, I think that's very much shared around the ground anyway. But Calum, what about you? I think Beth sums it up very well there, because after that first 10 minutes of the second half, I'm definitely guilty for it. I was getting frustrated, maybe more so at Ewan Anderson and some of the decisions he was making. Certainly raised frustrations around the ground, and maybe ultimately actually kind of got the crowd back into the game as well with some of his poor decision making, because I felt at the game until the substitutions, the crowd had kind of gone out of the game. And as Beth said, we were kind of going back into that almost similar pattern of the Ross County game where I thought, are we even going to score today?
Yeah, things had gone a little bit flat. At halftime, I was quite happy with the way things had gone. I thought, we will eventually get that goal, but I totally agree. Once we were sort of 10, 15 minutes into that second half, I was starting to get a little bit concerned. And, oh God, Ewan Anderson was absolutely awful. There's a few times where he could have just let the play flow and didn't. And then there's times just getting decisions totally wrong. He was awful. Did not enjoy him being in the middle of the park. But certainly the changes helped things. Absolutely. I mean, I'll take some credit here, as I always do. At half time, I'm going, we've gotten behind St Johnstone plenty of times here. It's not happening for Miovski. Get Duk through the middle. We'll see what happens. And lo and behold, we saw what happened, didn't we?
We did. And Beth, what was your feeling at the substitution? Did you like Calum call that substitution? I didn't personally think he would take Miovski off. Again, I think he tends to be quite stubborn around taking Bojan off. I did expect Kennedy to come off when I saw Bizawan lining up as well. And I actually wondered if he was going to maybe take Leighton Clarkson off as well at the time, because I just felt if you took Bojan Miovski off at that time, we then went with no height up front. And you know what St Johnstone are like, a big physical team. And I think despite making the change that he did, we didn't really change our style straight away, and we almost played into St Johnstone's hand until we realised if we actually run at them, we're going to cause them problems.
Yeah, I thought similar in that, Duk's been playing on this sort of left outside role, but we know he plays best at the top. And actually, some of these balls that Miofsky had missed, I think Duk would have went and scored them. So I probably, I totally agreed with the decision to take him off. I think it was the right thing to do. I was actually surprised he'd done it as early as he did. You're saying about the stubbornness. Managers like to leave it a little bit later. I don't know why. It's just what they do, is it? And I kind of said similar things of bringing on Bazowin. He didn't look quite 100% match sharp, but he hasn't had the minutes, let's be honest, to be fair. So, we'll allow him that. But he does a great move for the first goal. So the changes have definitely worked. And I think I was surprised they came at the time they did, but they came at the right time. They were the right changes to be made.
Yeah, maybe a sign that Jim Goodwin does actually know what he's doing. But the interesting one around the goal as well was, I'm really convinced if that ball hadn't found the back of the net and had gone out for, say, a goal kick, Duk goes away to be taken off for Christian Ramirez, because he was there stripped ready to come on and then had to put his jacket back on. And I was a big fan of Ramirez just standing in the dugout with his jacket on, like, Jim, like, any chance, like, I can still come on now, we're winning, just give me a run out. But Calum, Beth said it was a bit of a messy goal, but the more you watch it back, the defter that touch from Vinny comes. And I do agree with what Beth said around Vinny's match sharpness. Maybe I think that was certainly lacking, but again, can't be blamed around the lack of minutes. But that's almost the type of goal we needed to kind of kickstart any form of momentum. It needed to be scrappy, it needed to be messy, it just needed to find the back of the net.
Absolutely. It was very messy. I think we were aided by some poor St Johnstone defending. Yeah. But I originally thought nobody had touched it since Belarus. I had no idea what was going on. And I was sober, by the way, so I've got no excuses. But it turns out it was a fantastic little touch on the corner from Vinny. And it was interesting because certainly from where I was in the South Stand, people were very unhappy with us attempting sort of Liam Scales passing the ball to Belarus from the goal kick and then going to Anthony Stewart or whatever and us playing it short. But then I was also thinking, if we lump it long, we've got three tiny people up there. And it somehow paid off. I think that was thanks to poor St Johnstone defending, but it came at the right time. I think had it gone another sort of 5-10 minutes later, the crowd would have sort of turned a little bit more perhaps, and the frustrations mainly directed towards Ian Anderson would have then started going towards the team a little bit more. But it was fantastic, and Duk absolutely loved it, and I think he deserved it, because in terms of the first goal at the time, the offside goal, at the time I thought, I have no idea how that could possibly be offside. It looks like there's got a player behind him, but it was the correct decision. But I think he did deserve it off the basis of that, and he really, really, really enjoyed it. And I love when Duk scores, particularly at Pittodrie in front of the red shed, because he always goes absolutely mental, and it's like it's his first ever professional goal. He just loves it. I love him.
I love, though, how he managed to restrain himself from taking his top off as
Literally
well.
What I was going to say.
Don't want that booking yet, but funny you mentioned that goal kick routine, Calum, because that was doing my head in. And I don't actually know if it was the goal kick that led to the goal, but I remember just shouting, "What's the point? It's not working. Like, just let's get the ball moving. Let's get it up the park quicker." And if it wasn't, probably served me right. But some of our play from goal kicks, and especially set pieces as well, Beth, I don't know what you made about Mike Kennedy's delivery, but I thought that was severely lacking at the weekend.
Yeah, some of you notice the difference when Hayes came on and took that corner just instantly. Well, we went and scored from it, some of Kenny's corners Saturday was really, really poor. So I don't know, he maybe need to switch up the corner kick taker. Sometimes I feel like they're trying to use Stewart and Scales at the corners, and it's just not working. They're not. We've been gifted over the years with defenders that are pretty good at scoring from their head at corners. Maybe this is just not two guys that are able to do that. They are defenders at the end of the day. I was impressed with the move from the free kick because it initially happened and I was like, well, that was a load of rubbish. And then we obviously scored off the back of it. I was like, oh, I see what they did there. You were speaking about the goal kicks as well. I noticed that, the Scales was passing it to Roos. And I think part of that is because Roos is better at kicking a non-dead ball.
Yeah.
So sometimes it was okay, I get that and stuff, but then other times the other team's catching on to it and then time has passed too quickly. And so that's something they clearly need to work on in the training ground.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, that Scales was almost taking the goal kick, but it was trying to disguise it as a pass, maybe to try and put off the forward that was there as well. It was really interesting. But Calum, what were you were going to make a point there?
Was I? Oh, I think I just hated the goal kicks. I really hated the goal kicks. They really do my head in. But also, sorry, I remember my point. As much as us putting the ball in for Anthony Stewart and Liam Scales, it's not working too well for us. I really hope they don't start doing short corners again, though. That's not the answer.
True. But I did think for the height that we have in that team, with the centre backs, we should be doing better from set pieces. And it was quite ironic then that the second goal comes from one of the smallest men on the pitch, or the two smallest men on the pitch, combining Calum with Johnny Hayes, putting in a decent ball. And Duk, I almost think it's actually a free header the more I watch it back.
Oh, yeah, he's basically totally unmarked, which obviously helps his case. But Duk in the air is weirdly quite a threat. He scored a header against Motherwell as well, away. And despite his size, he seems to win more headers than Bojan Miovski when we are going long from goal kicks, which is baffling, to say the least. But it was a pinpoint ball from Johnny Hayes. Credit has to go to him after when he tried to cross it against Ross County and it went straight out for a throw and I shouted retire. I think he's made me shut my mouth quite quickly with that corner, to be fair to him.
Yeah, and Duk's come out in the press on Monday saying how much he's loving life at Aberdeen and how much he enjoys the fans loving him. And Beth, the more he scores, the more we're going to continue loving him.
Yeah, 100%. He's just became an absolute fan favourite, and you can just totally tell he's loving it himself. Anytime he scores, he's absolutely going for it. He is someone that is the definition of playing for the badge, which we definitely missed last season. I think that's something we've really gained this year. Guys like Duk, Miovski, Ramadani, you can see that they're playing for the badge. And one of the things I think is great as well is that we seem like a team this year. Last year, it didn't have that team feel. When we scored a goal, everyone celebrates, and I really, really like that.
Yeah, that's actually quite a good point, Calum. I think you've made it quite a lot as well about guys coming into the team for the first time this year and really getting what it means for us, the fans, to be playing for Aberdeen. Yeah,
they seem to have bought into it quite a lot, and I think certainly when we're attacking that red shed as well, they know if they go mental, the red shed's going to be equally mental. They just seem to love it. They seem to both lots seem to thrive off it, and it is fantastic to see. But yeah, Duk in particular, he's always playing with a smile on his face as well, which I really enjoy. He just always looks so happy. I just love it. It's fantastic. But I'm saying this, but in that barren spell, I was absolutely hating a lot of them other than Duk and Ramadani. But there does seem to be a bit more of a collective togetherness amongst the squad, which is helpful. I think, to be fair, adding Graeme Shinnie to that, someone who can drive them on, with or without the captain's armband, be that leader, push them on to do better, can only be a good thing. And obviously experience of knowing the league and what it takes to win here as well. Because as much as Duk, Miovski, fantastic players, inexperienced in this league, so Shinnie coming in will only help them, I presume.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't think Graeme Shinnie needs an armband to help him use that motivation to drive the rest of the team on. I think he can do that on his own. But Beth, with Hearts and St Mirren playing at the weekend as well, obviously it was imperative that Aberdeen picked up 3 points regardless of what happened at Paisley. But with those two teams drawing, that 3 points for us is almost even more significant now.
Yeah, for sure. I think, prior to Saturday's game, it was kind of like, have Hearts already kind of got this? Is Aberdeen actually in the contest? But with their result on Saturday, I think it just went, well, actually, it's not over yet. We've still got to play Hearts again. And I think, there's points to be won there. Hearts are like us. Well, most teams in the league this year are inconsistent. We've got these good bits, and on our good days we're good, but actually on our bad days we're pretty bad.
Yeah. And Calum, I suppose, are things looking rosy? Does one result change things, or could you say it's a bit of papering over the cracks? Obviously, we've got the semi-final to come this weekend, but given the fact, as I said, it was a draw in Paisley. Both teams play each other at Tynecastle on Friday night before, of course, we head to Tynecastle a week on Wednesday. Can we try and, if we just look at the league in isolation, use this result from the weekend, try and use that as momentum towards third place?
Absolutely. I mean, although St Johnstone were pretty bad at Pittodrie, they are a good team, or whether there's just a collection of kind of fodder that just sort of beats each other all the time. I don't know. But they were sitting pretty well in the league, especially I think when you consider how you maybe expect them to do at the start of the season. And even though they made it sort of difficult for us at times, I think the fact we did come out with a two-goal win, a clean sheet, it's a confidence booster. However, it does paper over some cracks perhaps, but it's a step in the right direction. I think with the additions as well in January, hopefully more to come as well. I'm sort of a little bit more confident again. Whether that'll be obliterated by this time next week, I don't know, but we will soon find out. But it's certainly a step in the right direction. I think there's still work to be done, absolutely, but hopefully we're maybe gonna get there. I don't know. I'm talking myself into a shoot now that it's not going to be okay. Oh God.
Yeah, you should maybe just stop talking before you get far too excited. But that, of course, was the weekend's win over St Johnstone. Beth, thanks very much for joining us to look back at the weekend results. You'll, of course, be joining us again on Thursday to preview the semi-final, where, of course, you've done a special mixed playlist for us as part of the episode as well. Before we wrap up this episode, where, of course, can people find you on the airwaves in the northeast of Scotland?
So they can find me on Original 106 on a Sunday 5 till 9, on Mearns FM on a Monday 6 till 8, and they can also find me DJing across the place. So on the 3rd of February, I'm hosting a night. It's called Just Beth Presents, where I get some other local DJs from Aberdeen to play. It's in D2, which is downstairs in Cafe Drummond's. So if you like your house music, make sure you come along to that as well.
Yeah, and we'll get that retweeted on our Twitter page at RTG_podcast if you don't follow us on there. Of course, if you've been watching on YouTube, remember to leave a like and comment with your thoughts from the weekend's victory as well. And as I said, we'll be back on Thursday previewing that all-important Cup semi-final.